Welcome to our Shield of the Sun video. This is Bruce Lee and the Martial Arts Part 10. If you haven't watched the other videos, please go back and watch them so you know where we're at. And so sometime many years after Bruce's death, his son, against his mother's better judgment, sought to become like his father, a Hollywood movie star. That person was Brandon Lee. When Enter the Dragon was released, it came out after Lee's death, and this movie started the Hollywood martial art franchise machine. After Bruce's death, Linda officially moved herself and Brandon and Shannon to Seattle, where there Bruce was buried. Sometime later, the family moved to California and lived in a wealthy suburb in Rolling Hills. After Bruce's death, Brandon Lee was raised by his mother, and the only father figures he had were the men who completed Brandon Lee's training in his father's martial art of Jeet Kune Do. Bruce's top students took over his martial arts schools while Linda was still the prime owner after her husband's death. Brandon was trained by Bruce's two top students, who also understood the black arts to the side of martial arts. Martial arts, when trained in it very extensively, will cause demon possession. Black belts who have high degrees in any form of martial art also have demons inside these men and women, some knowingly, some unknowingly. Brandon Lee is a blood-related descendant of the Lee Illuminati family. Like his father before him, also like his father, Satan had an interest in acquiring and tormenting Brandon Lee. Satan's so-called claim on Brandon Lee resulted from his father's deal with the Baphomet of Hollywood when Bruce signed on to star in The Green Hornet. Satan's deal with Bruce Lee for this sitcom was he can call in any favor he wanted to at his leisure. Bruce Lee didn't take this fully seriously at the time, thinking he would always protect his son. But Satan is evil to the core, and he knows future events and thinks ahead in years. What Satan wanted from Bruce Lee is what he usually wants, a human sacrifice from him. He wanted to murder his firstborn son, Brandon Lee, for his glory. Bruce didn't know this is what Satan wanted, and nor did Satan tell him that. He only told his inner core followers, whose job is to use their connections within the occults to collect Satan's due. Like his father, Brandon, growing up as a child to adulthood, he was tormented and haunted by evil spirits who sometimes poltergeist him. Brandon's studies into Satanism started like his father as a traditional religion in practice. Bruce, when he was alive, started Brandon's training and taught Brandon the family religion of spirit worship, which is also known as ancestor worship. Bruce's spiritual practices were a Satanism form of Buddhist worship involving prayers to the spirits of the ancestors, which the Bible calls demons. Brandon would have learned this form of religion and also his father's very advanced skill and form of martial arts known as Jeet Kune Do. Also, Bruce's top students did not just practice the martial art, they also practiced Lee's form of spirit worship. Bruce's #1 top student after his death became a leader among the masters of Jeet Kune Do. His name was Dan Onisanto. Dan Onisanto was Brandon's main teacher after Lee's death, and he was the one who gave Brandon his certificate or black belt recognition in the art of Jeet Kune Do. When Brandon was approaching his pre-teens, a few years after his father's death, he had an awful encounter with an evil spirit in the form of a faceless shadow. This demon attacked Brandon and entered him, leaving Brandon in pain and crying and yelling in shrills. Like his father, Brandon's demonic possession and his demonic practices caused a violent temper in Brandon, along with the desire for reckless behavior. Also, like his father at heart, Brandon had a good heart and a very joyful spirit. He had a gift for making people happy, and when he was not troubled by darkness, he was a beautiful person to be around. As a teenager, Brandon was growing up in a well-to-do, rich people area of Rolling Hills, which is an LA suburb. This area had a lot of people Brandon's age living in it, that were the sons and daughters and other relatives of Hollywood actors, actresses, producers, executives, writers, etc. Brandon, because of his family's success, grew up a rich kid and the son of the late Bruce Lee. This was not an easy title for someone to have, for it caused either great respect from people toward Brandon, or it caused great resentment or jealousy from people toward Brandon. Brandon, because of the fact he was shy, but when he opened up, he was very social, had a hard time communicating with people. This lack of communication was for several reasons. Brandon's beliefs and practices were strange to his peers. He often did not open up for fear that they could not fully understand what he was involved in and what he has experienced, and he was right. He was the son of a very famous man, so people thought of him negatively, and they were cruel to him behind his back out of jealousy, racism, or envy. The vibe and the culture of a conservative community and school felt like pure hell to him, and he was not completely alone. There were other peers who came from entertainment families whose families were also involved in spirit worship, and they went through spiritual experiences that Brandon could relate to. This clique were the group Brandon hung out with, and they seemed like gothic kids of wealthy families who were strange in their behavior. Brandon hated to be labeled, and he hated the high school and the community altogether, because the people were generally hypocrites and prejudiced. Brandon was also very protective of his sister Shannon and his mom Linda. Shannon was also trained in spirit worship and martial arts as well, and she is like her brother and father in so many ways. She even stood close to Brandon during his film career. She even acted as his manager before she decided to also do martial art films. Brandon was known for having a free spirit that needed to express itself in some spiritually fun way. Going to Chadwick High School in Rolling Hills was always smothering that spirit of Brandon, causing him to snap at times. Brandon got into fights in high school that often ended frighteningly quick, where his opponents, who were usually just spoiled and rotten young kids with no real growth, just stupid arrogance and ignorance with massive egos. Brandon also rebelled against teachers, especially when he thought they were wrong about certain things. Brandon was actually very smart, and amazingly you will find that he was full of wisdom and knowledge, but he had no patience for teachers he did not respect or agree with. Often his behavior in high school became a prime concern for Linda, who was often not happy about Brandon not taking high school education seriously. Brandon actually liked education. The problem was he hated the environment of the school. He felt like he just did not fit in.